Okay, so first news story of the week. Well, that's actually a news story of last week. um,
Um,
The last
yes,
of week.
yes. Basically, what happened last week? We always filmed the After Eight Weekly on Friday morning. Friday evening, it turned out that Sony had managed to leak its own trailer for The Last of Us
yeah.
Part Two Remastered, and this basically meant that, rather unfortunately, Naughty Dog had to basically reveal all of its plans ahead of when they were planning to, which is not great. But we do now know what The Last of Us 2 Remastered is all about. And yeah, obviously we had issues and problems with Naughty Dog going back to basically redo a game that they'd only basically just finished a couple of years back, and which already played great on PlayStation 5. But John, it actually turns out that this is not a full remaster slash remake. It is more of a kind of, how would you describe it? A director's cut, a retooling, bonus material, native PS5 port. And yeah, I think we're a bit more comfortable with this project now, right?
Yeah, and actually one of the supporters, Greg Brown, asked that specifically, do you think Naughty Dog would have been better served calling it T-Loop Part Two, or T-Loop 2 Director's Cut, since it seems like they used Remastered to match the remake of Part 1.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It seems like it would have been similar
Right.
to Death Stranding's Next Gen Edition, which didn't see the same backlash, and I 100% agree. This feels more like a director's cut release than like a proper remastered sort of game. And
Yeah.
I think that it sort of, when you see the remastered tag on there, it makes you think it's something perhaps more than it is. But most of the new stuff they've added is much more in line with a director's cut release, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, unreleased content, new maps, some new modes, and all kinds of stuff like that, in addition to some improved visuals. Though to what end we have yet to find out, obviously.
Yeah.
So given that, and like, I guess the $10 upgrade charge that they have, which I think is fair for all the extra content that they're adding to it, I think it's really just a branding thing. And so calling it remastered, I think, is a mistake. And the other thing that I think would have made it, would have improved the reception, is a PC version announcement at the same time. Say, hey, it's coming to PC and PS5. It's director's cut. I'm pretty sure people would not have had much of an issue with that. And I think everyone's kind of expecting a PC port at some point. I'm genuinely surprised, because I feel like with The Last of Us 1 Remastered, when they announced it, didn't they also kind of say, yeah, there's also a PC version in the works. It's going to come later. And there was no hint of that here, which kind of surprises me.
Does it though? There was such a negative reaction to Part 1 when it came out because the port was just not very good.
Yeah, but this would have been their
Maybe
chance
they
to...
just want to... Maybe they just want to sidestep that whole controversy, or make it, they've obviously been robbed of, a great deal of their marketing beats for this particular project. So maybe they had the ability to hold something back,
Right.
That's possibly the explanation there.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about that, Alex? I mean, obviously it is going to come to PC. The work has been done really in terms of, well, you would think the lessons have been learned for PC, I believe.
I also think arguably the only reason why this exists is because there's a PC version. Like they with Last of Us Part 1, they most likely that was about bringing the engine and the tech to PC in the first place, and then was about getting Part 2, which is very similar in a lot of ways, onto PC. Like I'll agree with John. It's so weird not to see the PC announced with it, in terms of because that's Sony's new push. But at the same time, the extremely poor reception to the first part when it launched, which was very justified in my opinion. It was very poor at launch.
It was.
And it got much, much better over time. Still, I think it could be better in a couple areas, but that's neither here nor there. I think, then it makes sense that they would maybe want to save that for a point when they can maybe show it off better with more controlled messaging and perhaps a bit more details about it. One thing that I would have really liked about this is they did have like a short blurb. It's basically a sentence about what is better and beyond DLC equivalent, like changes to the game, and that that like roguelike mode they're adding. Beyond those, they talked about like 1440p upscaled to 4K resolution for a performance mode.
Yeah.
But they don't say necessarily what they mean by upscaled there.
It's going to be just it'll be like part 1, right? Which is just 1440p upscaled to 4K. Nothing crazy there. I mean, they could, I suspect, do an FSR2 pass, but I don't think they need to. Basically, if we look at this, it's saying that enhanced graphics, native 4K output mode in fidelity mode, 1440p upscale to 4K in performance mode, unlock frame rate option for TVs that support VRR, increased texture resolution, increased level of detail distances, improved shadow quality, animation sampling rate, and more, which kind of sounds similar to what was happening in prior native PS5 ports of Naughty Dog games.
I think, Rich, the thing is about that is the unlock thing for VRR TVs is the key. Like, if you look at the Uncharted collection, for instance, if you run it in native 4K mode and just turn off the frame limiter, it's actually pretty high and close to 60 FPS, if I recall.
Yeah, but like part 1 had really big issues with that mode.
Oh, that's true.
You know?
Part
like
1 wasn't.
Oliver talked about it back then. I don't even know if it's in the game anymore.
But I feel like
the 40 FPS mode still in the game on the first one?
I guess the question is this going to be heavier than that? I suspect not, because it doesn't seem like they've done as much to it. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I think the game in its original form still looks absolutely superb. Like, I think it looks better than a lot of modern current gen games being released these days. But obviously it had an insane amount of money and time poured into it. So, yeah.
There has been some controversy, which I think is a bit sort of overblown, about the fact you need to pay for the upgrade. But, $10 for what is essentially DLC, I don't see that being a problem. It's actually more than that, really. I mean, it is a native PS5 version of the game. But I think the point is that there's a perfectly good PS5 version already. You've got the 60 FPS unlock for the PS4 Pro version, which is, if you're happy with that, that's basically one of the big key enhancements that you would have expected to get from PS5, and you've got it for free if you want it. So I don't really have too much of an issue with the pricing. There are comparisons to other games which have, done free upgrades, like The Witcher 3, for example. But
Gears of War, another one.
Yeah, that's another one. I don't really see a problem with charging like a $10 upgrade fee. And it's not as if you even need to spend, I guess it is going to be a full price product, but there's nothing stopping you buying a used copy of T-Loop 2 on PS4 and just paying the $10 upgrade, right? So I don't really have too much of a problem with that. And I guess this sort of leads us on to the discussion of, what's going to happen with Horizon Zero Dawn, which was the other remake / remaster / unknown, as to what's going to happen with that. I'm wondering whether it's going to be much the same thing as this, where it is, I suspect it would have to be more than that, I guess. It could well be some sort of enhanced version of Decima, I don't know. Any thoughts on that one, John? I mean, that's kind of like the big unknown now. We were concerned about The Last of Us Part 2 getting a remaster, and that's kind of not really a concern anymore. But where do you think this leaves Horizon?
I feel like they're going to have to do
a bit more.
Yeah, I feel like more work needs to be done to bring that up to spec, because the whole point of The Last of Us Part 1 was to bring it up to spec with the sequel, right? So that they actually look comparable. It's using that technology. It's, obviously a lot of the technologies developed for Part 2 went into that. They also pushed it a little bit further in some areas, but by and large, it's very much those two games feel like, they're connected directly. Horizon Zero Dawn, not so much. That's significantly less impressive than the sequel, as you would hope. But so I feel like a lot more work would need to be done if the goal is to bring it up to Forbidden West, which maybe it's not, actually. That'll be the question as well. Is it just going to be that? But didn't that also receive a 60 FPS PS5 patch?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So what, they're going to have to do more to it. It's just, oh man, as I said before, open world games like that, and I know a lot of people love them, but I enjoyed Horizon as well initially, but those are the types of games I just don't see that much purpose in replaying and playing. You know what I mean? Like The Last of Us is almost like, I would say, a film. I mean, yeah, it has a lot of cutscenes, but there's plenty of gameplay in there as well. But, you know, revisiting something like that is like popping in a film that you enjoyed and going for a second round, right? And I think that's quite enjoyable. But these open world games, like revisiting them, just...
It's a lot of time.
It's so much time commitment for, you know, something that... I better stop before I get in trouble from Horizon fans, actually. But
well, I mean, it's fine to have an opinion about something. You don't have to get in trouble about it. I mean, and just I'd say like The Witcher 3 is one of those games where I could imagine revisiting it and at some point in time, because you would maybe make moral decisions in the game, which could have ramifications for the larger story, which is the big part of The Witcher games in general.
Oh, I'm so glad I turned the corner on The Witcher 3 after years of not enjoying it, and then finally playing all the way through it.
You get it after a certain amount of time, and it's mainly due to the storytelling and the moral decision making. The open world trappings are obviously still an issue in the world of The Witcher 3.
I would have been happier with a smaller game world that was more detailed and dense, but you're right. That's not why I love The Witcher 3 now. It's
Skellige the game or Novigrad the game. That would have been interesting. But yeah, I see exactly what we're talking about here. For me, I really still hope they're not making anything on that, and I'd rather see those resources spent toward a new, unique, smaller experience for that same amount of development time and money. It doesn't need to be another AAA open world game. It could literally be just a really small, short experience, and that's enjoyable.
If they must do a remaster, Killzone Shadowfall.
Remaster one of the Killzone games.
Actually, I know people would rather have Killzone 2, I would say, but I actually think Shadowfall, I maintain, is a really interesting, well-designed game that felt like they were looking at something like Crysis, and they wanted to make their take on that. But unfortunately, it didn't register with a lot of people, and it does have some rough edges. It's not as straightforward as like the typical Killzone campaign was, and it landed with a bit of a thud. But I still think that there's something really cool and smart about that game, and it's a lot of fun to play, and it could really
coming
benefit.
Up to the 10-year anniversary there, John.
That's right.
Oh yeah, good point.
That's right.
Oh my god,
still holds up. It's a beautiful game, and it sounds amazing too. Like, good lord.
Absolutely, yeah. I guess the other thing about The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, which I find quite intriguing, is the concept that they're including some in-development levels that never made the final game.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's just a really interesting concept, I think, and it will give players the ability to see part of the development process. I mean, they're going to be extremely rough, right? Probably just block levels. But it gives you an idea of how Naughty Dog works, which I think is really, really compelling. I'm really quite excited about this release now, because there's, I think it's fairly priced.
Yeah.
The survival mode sounds interesting, and native PlayStation 5 app with all of those HDMI 2.1 modes in there. I think it's it's a worthwhile upgrade. I think you're getting your money's worth from your extra $10. So yeah, release date there is January the 19th next year. So not so long to wait either.
Wow.
Anything more to talk about this one?
Just if they're going to release it on PC, please do a good job. I do not want to make another video saying this sucks. Like, I'm tired of making videos saying something sucks. I want to make a video saying this is great. So yeah, who's ever responsible? I don't know who's making it, but please do a good job.
Please do a good job.
Please.
Yeah.
I don't quite sort of figure out how that's going to compute. It's not as if you can say, the sort of inverse is don't do a bad job, right?
Right. Yeah.
What do you how do you expect them to process that information?
Linearly.
Just do a good port, please.
Yeah, please.